Hello and welcome back for part 6 of the Chimera build. And this one's going to begin with cutting the fret slots. Now, I know a lot of people ask me in various other builds why I don't use a miter saw for this and why I do it by hand. And well, for the most part I don't have a miter saw or really any place to keep one. But apart from that, I don't think that cutting fret slots by hand is quite as difficult as a lot of people make it out to be. It can be a bit nerve-wracking at times, but as long as you've got everything measured out properly and you've double-checked everything before you begin and you take your time with it, it's really not that bad. And then once all the fret slots are cut, going in with a radius block and beginning to sand in the fretboard radius. This one I used a 12-inch radius. And I also have a particular stance when I'm doing this that allows me to just push the sanding block straight forward and then pull it straight back. And this is to try and avoid any natural twist that might occur just by the way that your arms or shoulders move if you're doing this at some other angle. You can actually see in some of these shots kind of a darker patch near the bottom of the fretboard, and that's the area that the sanding block hasn't quite gotten to yet. And you can see as time goes by, you can actually see it shrinking. And of course you can also see just how much material has to be removed to radius a fretboard. Once the radius is in, I'm just going and sanding the whole thing with some relatively fine grit sandpaper on a leveling beam. And double checking it's all straight. And now I'm going back in with the fret slotting saw because as I radius the fretboard, that made the fret slots shallower at both ends and a little bit in the middle. So I'm going back through just to cut them to their full depth again. And so now I'm just going in and rounding over some of the back edges of the headstock. This is mostly for player comfort. And if you've ever picked up a guitar by the neck and carried it around and those back edges weren't rounded over, you're gonna feel it. Now I'm working on the piece of Quilted Maple that's going to go on the front of the headstock. That's fairly thick at this point, so I've got some 60 grit sandpaper on a fairly powerful random orbital sander, and I'm just going to grind this down to get a bit thinner before I glue it on. Of course, now I have to be really careful getting it back off of the table so that it doesn't crack or break as I get it off. So for as thin as I've got this, I can just go in with the marking knife and begin cutting out the space for the truss rod cover. is something I would normally do on a bandsaw, but with this piece of wood being this thin, that means that the marking knife was enough to do it, but also had some concerns that if I went to a bandsaw with that, it would break the piece of wood entirely. So I begin gluing on the headstock plate. Once that's glued on, just going over to the spindle sander and sanding it down to match the headstock shape. So now moving on to cutting out the pickup cavities. I begin using a Forstner bit on my drill press to remove most of the material. Now this is the part of the build where the saying comes in, need a tool, make a tool. So because the fretboard is already on this guitar, my regular routing template for humbuckers won't fit in the place where it needs to be in order to make the space for the neck pickup. So I need to make a new template that has some material cut away so that it can fit around the end of the fretboard. And here, of course, I'm using my regular template to make the new template. Once that part's cut out, I'm just going to go back to the bandsaw and remove the other material so that this can get around the fretboard. I'm just cleaning it up a bit with some hand tools. And I can finish routing out the pocket for the neck pickup. And then for the bridge pickup, I can use my regular template. Now here you'll be able to see in just a moment that channel that I had routed in way back when to connect the two pockets is successfully connecting both pockets and the control cavity. So that will do it for part 6. Hope you all enjoyed it, and hope we'll see you around again for the next part. And thank you for watching.